2, 1, you're on the air.
Good evening. Please join us for the pledge.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the September 9th, 2021 Planning Board meeting. We're going to make a little adjustment on the agenda. Yankee Development, first on the agenda tonight for an extension of a preliminary subdivision approval. Mike, did you have any comments on this?
Yeah, during the comprehensive plan discussion, we were talking about the, I'm trying to think, Indian artifacts, Native American
Yes.
artifacts. And one of the neighbors of your property came up that they had some artifacts on their property. They had them checked out, and they saw that there were artifacts that went further onto your property. I'm not saying they're where you're disturbing, but they should be at least located and on your EAF. Make sure that you put that on there, because
Okay.
it said none, I believe, on the EAF.
As long as we know which neighbor it is, if we can.
Yeah, I'll
have
help you with that.
info.
If you can give me a call, I'll point out exactly where it is.
Yeah,
I think it was to the south, if I remember
We
correctly.
had a similar discussion on that, Mike. That's a
Yep.
good point.
So, just something to think about when, because you're coming back with the new layout, I believe, once you
In
get
2
this approval.
weeks.
There you go. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Rich?
Engineering Department does not have an objection to granting the 180-day extension. There are issues with approvals needed in the future for preliminary plan approval, but if they're coming in with a new application, they don't have to worry about those at the moment, but they will need to meet them ultimately.
And Pat?
So, Mr. Chairman, no objection to the extension. What Mike referenced is not an issue in the case of a preliminary approval. Remember, you're extending preliminary. If this application were to come back in its current form for final approval, that's when they'd have to deal with that. But as you heard alluded to, there is a potential of a modification to this plan, which may come shortly before you. But in terms of the action tonight, no issues, no objections.
So this has been around for a while, right? I know some of the board members and I discussed this at the last meeting. Do you see some activity on this in the next 6 months? I know we've spoken, but I'd like you to
I
comment on the
do,
board.
now that we're gonna move forward with this new plan that we had a meeting with you guys about a week ago.
So you plan on coming back in 2 weeks with?
We're planning on coming
hopefully
back
some-
2 weeks and giving you the new plan, and hopefully we can move it along.
Good.
This is the one we discussed a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I was just really wanted to notify the board of
Yep.
what we're thinking about here, and that we're optimistic that there will be some movement here. Okay. Anthony, you want to make a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion for extension of preliminary subdivision approval. This is a 180-day extension.
Yes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Have a
Have a good night, thank you.
Next on the agenda is DPL Realty LLC, 102 Glenida Avenue, Carmel, residential site plan for resolution. Mike?
Oh, all my comments have been addressed.
And Rich, I don't believe you had any comments
All
either?
engineering comments have been addressed, that there was a performance bond that was submitted, and that needs to be included in tonight's resolution. Pat will touch base on that.
And Pat?
So, Mr. Chairman, you have the resolution of approval for this, as Rich just indicated, we have a performance which needs to be added to the resolution, a performance bond of $63,000, and an engineering fee of... a performance bond of $63,000 and an engineering fee of $3,150. So if you could make that as part of the motion?
Did you capture that? I got it. Okay. Any comments from the board? If not, we need a motion to adopt the final site plan.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adopt the final site plan.
With the additions I just
Pat's
described.
comments.
Oh, I thought I would just do that the resolution. No?
We're adding it to the resolution.
Okay,
So
yeah,
the
so-
resolution didn't have those numbers.
Okay, so we'll be adding to the resolution two things. An engineering fee for $3,150 and a performance bond in the amount of $63,000.
We have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Rick. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, Hirsch, Stacy, 311 Drewville Road for resolution. Just as a reminder, that's the kennel that was come forward a couple times to us. Mike and Rich, I don't believe you had any further comments. We've reviewed this several times.
Correct.
In previous meetings.
And
Pat?
Mr. Chairman, you have a resolution of approval before you. And just so you know, Mike had some minor comments from the last item, the last meeting about disinfecting the kennels and so forth. Those are included in the resolution.
Yeah, I think there was some good activity on this. We've looked at this several ways. Anthony?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to offer the resolution of the Planning Board of the Town of Carmel, number 21-09, September 9, 2021, tax map number 66.13-1-76, Stacy Hirsch, 102 Glenida Avenue, final site plan approval.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, nice job on this.
Very much.
Came out well. Okay, well, we were going fast. Next on the agenda is Delamere Fitzpatrick Family Chiropractic, 87 Ellen Avenue, site plan. There's several comments here. Mike, would you mind going first and reading your comments?
Applicant proposes to legalize an existing chiropractic practice in the residential zone. According to my records, there are 2 one-family dwellings on this lot. That second one-family dwelling is where the practice is going. So that was a cottage, I guess you would call it at one time.
Mike, just for clarity for myself, when you come up the driveway towards the top,
All the way to the right.
there's something right in front of you, and then as you make the left, there's a house and a shed back in there. Are you talking about the little cottage, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So
It's at the top of the driveway, this, the first building you see.
Would be where the chiropractor would be?
That's
Yes.
correct, and
Okay.
that's where the second one-family house was, according to my records.
Yeah,
So they
okay,
took the house out and made it into the other.
thank you.
If so, a use variance is required. I think it might be beneficial to do a site inspection with the board members to see what is on the site. Who owns the chicken coop on the, I guess it's to the north? Joel already got back to me on that. The chicken coop is owned by the
Delameres.
Delameres,
Yes.
and they are going to get an easement or figure out what they can do to make that right. The code allows offices of a professional in a residence. It would be outside the residence in a detached accessory structure. Use variance is required. What is the area of the residence? I need that to determine if it meets the code, which you're only allowed to have 25% of the floor area of the habitable floor area of the house as the size of the office. Provide number of employees, parking calculation, you have to include the house, and all notes from 156-21 of the zoning code. Remove pre-existing non-conforming from the zoning table. It's not clear what you mean exactly, but well, I went over that with Joel already. There are several variances required from the ZBA, lot area, depth, side yard for the workshop, rear yard for an existing building, which I'm not sure which one that is, rear yard for a workshop, rear yard for an office, and rear yard for a garage. I need to discuss the list with the architect. I can't figure out which building is the existing building. We discussed it, and he's going to make it clear on the plan.
Thank you, Mike. Rich, you also had some comments?
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Referrals would be warranted to the Mahopac Fire Department, Putnam County Department of Health. Permits would be required maybe for the Department of Health for septic. Drawing indicates a proposed one-story frame building. However, the application says the office will be an existing building. This should be clarified. The drawing indicates 400 square foot of disturbance. This area must be identified on the drawing. It is unclear if the proposed existing building is serviced by water and sewer. This information must be provided. The applicant did not provide any details related to stormwater control, water, location of service line, if there's sufficient capacity in the system, septic, location of fields, or paving in the parking area. Standard if there's any public improvements, performance bond, associated engineering fee, and if there's a need for a stormwater maintenance agreement, that will be needed. Some detailed comments. Provide a legend on the drawing. The amount of traffic entering the site should be provided. Graphic illustration of vehicle movements through the site should be provided. All turning radii should be provided and graphically provided. Site distances at the driveway location should be specified on the plan. Any clearing that's necessary will have to be provided. All calculations need to be shown. As the intended use is a medical office, a driveway profile and conditions of the driveway must be provided. The board knows I forwarded some pictures earlier today. You saw the condition of the driveway. Kim, yours bounced back, so you didn't get them, so sorry about that.
I was there today. It's fine.
Due to safety concerns, there may be a need for guide rails along the driveway. All plantings shall be installed per section 142 of the code. Erosion sediment controls for the site must be provided. It's unclear if any additional electrical utilities are being installed, and a lighting spill pit plan must be provided.
Rich, thank you. I had some of my own comments similar to yours when I went out there. Pat?
So, Mr. Chairman, this use is a permitted conditional use in this zone. The use is described as an office of a professional in residence. So the chiropractor must be the principal resident of this site. As Mike indicated, the Section 156.21, which is the conditional use provisions for an office of a professional in residence, there are 5 criteria that must be met in order for this to be classified as a permissible use. The first one, as Mike indicated, the office needs to be within the principal structure. That's not the case. It's in the separate shed that you see as you come up the driveway. Not a permitted use, requires the use variance, as Mike indicated. There are requirements for signage, so that has to be clarified, Joel. That's an easy issue. There's a number of there's a limit on the number of employees, so that has to be clarified. There's an off-street parking requirement. Joel's numbers, I believe, are wrong. If you meet with Mike to clarify that, there's plenty of space to meet the parking requirement, so you need to demonstrate. I think you have the office parking requirement incorrect. There is an office parking requirement for a doctor or dentist office. I think that covers medical offices, which this may be. So you need to sit with Mike to determine that. If that's the case, you'd need 4 parking spaces, not the 3 that you indicated. But again, plenty of space for the parking. Can't have overnight guests, and the rest of those conditions would be satisfied. The principal issue, as Rich alluded to and Mike indicated, is this is going from a private residence where the driveway is not an issue for somebody who lives there. If you want to manage that driveway to get to your home, that's fine. Once it's now changing to a prohibited use, which requires a use variance, which is a public use, is the driveway adequate? So Rich needs to really look at this carefully, and I think Joel needs to provide us some additional details with respect to that driveway in particular. Those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thanks, Pat. I'll open up to the, Joe, do you have any comments before I open up to the board?
Absolutely. As far as the criteria under 156.21, except for the, as Pat said, the office is not part of the house, so that's a variance as we spoke about. The sign will meet the 2 square feet requirements. There's no one employed. It's the husband and wife are both the doctors, and they have no employees, so that's taken care of. The off-street parking, I'll double check. If it comes under doctors, we can certainly provide. There's more than enough room for the extra parking spaces, and there's no overnight patients that are going to be in this space at all. I think Mike went over all his comments. I have no problem. We'll go through those things carefully. And with regard to the driveway, it is not in good condition, number one. And I said that, before you go spending money paving it, let's make sure that it meets the town engineer's criteria. So I will sit down and find out exactly what he wants. With regard to the guide rails, I think that's an excellent idea, and that I think will certainly incorporate that concept also. With regard to the other parking, as Mike said and Pat said, there's more than enough room for the 4 parking spaces that are required for the house.
But you need more than that, Joel.
What's that?
You need more than that, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Professional office in a home is
No,
one for...
I'm talking about the house.
No, I understand, but for the employees, it's 1 for each professional and other full-time employee plus 3 additional. So
Okay.
you would need 5.
5 total of, I'm talking about the house.
If that's what you had there. Again, you didn't write the employees, so I don't know exactly, but I assume
But
it's
there are
just the 2.
no employees. There are no employees.
Well, there's 2 professionals that
There's 2
work.
professionals
There you
and
go.
plus the 3, so it's 5.
Correct.
And
Go ahead.
there's also already a 2-car garage, and I believe the house needs 4 parking spaces, and there's plenty of space between the professional office and the garage to provide for another 2 cars. So I think as far as the site's concerned, we have adequate area for all the requirements of the code.
I just
I
want to
just
be
have a
clear that
question on
that's
this.
8 or 9 parking spaces that are required on the site, not the 3 that are shown on the plan. So again,
I
I
just
think
said
there's
that.
there's room for that, but it has to be shown. on
We're
the plan.
talking a total of 8 parking spaces.
Or 9,
All
depending
eight.
on how you look at that, yeah.
I just want to be clear on
Yep.
that, because we have a little.
Yeah,
talk.
no, that's,
It's a total of 9 spaces, that's correct. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not shown now, but it will be shown, of course.
And the 2 garages count as 2 of those?
So again, we need to know about that garage. Is it really a garage? Is it a storage shed? You know, so it needs to be legitimate parking space. I don't know what's going on in that
and
building.
It will be. So the answer is 2 cars in the garage and 3 cars for the house and 5 cars for the office.
Joel, can a fire truck get up there?
Again, I'm not a fireman, so
Okay, so
I'll,
we'll work on
I
that
think Rich's,
separately,
to
right?
Rich's
this was
point,
set-
we
this-
need to get their input here.
if you look at Rich's report, it has to be sent to the
Right,
fire
Rich
department.
mentioned that.
So that we'll find out if they have any problems. I mean, oh, just another thing, there was some concern about the driveway, which I agree with. The way the Delamere's work, they only have 1 patient at a time, so then really, even though we need the 5 cars, there won't be more than 1 car, 1 patient at a time. And what they do is they separate the times 15 minutes so that technically you won't have people crisscrossing the driveway. So if there's an appointment from 1 to 1:30, the next appointment's not till 1:45.
Well, one of my messages here is two-way traffic, how would this be handled? Again, Rich is more of an expert on it than I certainly am, but I think, my opinion, and I'll defer to Rich, but you could have a delivery, you could have someone coming early to the appointment, you could have someone coming late, so there's a lot of things, Rich, that I'm sure Rich is going to have to look at here from the
Yeah, and
guardrails
it's
to
not,
what
again,
happens.
remember, this is a medical operation, so it's not inconceivable that there are, you know, a van, a medical
Yeah,
van, an ambulance
exactly.
that needs to access the driveway. So it needs to work, it needs to
Yeah.
be safe.
Let me open it up to the board a little bit, get some comments to help Joel move forward.
Yeah, I would just echo the comments about the driveway. I mean, that thing, putting aside the very poor shape that it's in.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Not yet.
Is this on?
You're on, yep.
Okay. Putting aside the very poor shape that the driveway is in, it is extremely steep. There are a couple of S-curves, you know, to enter it, and then again up on the top. To back out of one of those parking spaces and make a U-turn to go back down the hill, you're getting very close to the edge. So safety, to me, would have to be a paramount issue
Yeah.
there.
No, as far as, at the top, there's certain requirements for the parking spaces and the backup space, so that will be made more clear on the drawing.
Joel, is there room to to install a pull-off spot along the access to that driveway? In the event that we have 2 vehicles, one coming in, one coming out?
Yeah, this is, the driveway's coming up over here. This area over here, there's enough for, there's enough for the 5 cars over here. They will have enough to back up and then just pull out forward. So the answer is yes. Again, there are certain requirements behind each 10 by 20 parking space. There has to be at least 24 feet backup, and we will show that.
Yeah, but
We'll
the
dimension
parking
it so
spaces
it's
are up at the top. I think the question is about the driveway.
Oh, well, as I said, that, Rich has asked me to show a profile for the driveway, which we'll do for the next submission.
So if you were to go midpoint of that driveway, okay, is there a place to put a pull-off there?
You know, there is a spot, if we have to, if Rich feels that's necessary in case 2 cars.
Well, if 2 cars are encountering each other at the same
So
time,
they-
one's going up
yeah.
and one's going
Right,
down.
so Just as a courtesy pullover.
No, I agree.
Typically,
So,
whoever's
yeah,
going up has right of way.
there is, of course, on this side, of course, it's steep, so this is where I think Rich
Right,
wants
I
the
mean,
guide
it's not
rail.
practical,
But on
but
this side,
but
there
I
is
think
an
it's a
area
good
over
idea.
here where 1 car could pull over and let the other car through.
Yeah, I don't think you should plan on only one traffic pattern at a time, because there will be times that
Non-expected
delivery
delivery.
comes, someone comes early for appointment, someone's coming late, someone has an emergency, someone, whatever the case is. Again, I don't mean to be doing Rich's, job. I know Rich has a lot of comments, rightfully so.
Yeah, you know, I mean, these are all concerns that need to be looked at. That's what the board should be doing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it is a single-lane driveway for a home. It's not going to be a public use for a medical office, regardless if there's one appointment or not. There are other issues in there.
Yep.
There's a safety issue with the condition of the driveway and the guide rails. Turning radii are important. What kind of trucks are going to be there, et cetera, et cetera.
You also want to take into consideration, the inclement weather days, that, if that's iced over, they have to get that taken care of before they can get anyone up there.
Sure. All right, I think there's a lot of work for Joel to do, working with Rich, Mike, and others, so
No problem.
we'll see
See you next time.
I'm
We'll
not
be
sure
here.
when, but I'm sure you'll be back.
Oh, yeah.
You got a lot of information to provide.
Arnold Schwarzenegger would say, I'll be back.
Yes. All right, thanks, Joel. We're all totally in agreement there with the comments.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is gonna be a whole nother set of
Yeah. So next on the agenda is Fonte subdivision, 419 Union Valley Road for a sketch plan for 2 lots.
Zebo?
Pat, I'd like to start with you, just so that for the board's help here, you can explain what's required for a sketch plan from us.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So our subdivision requirements involve a 3-step process generally. There's an initial plan that gets submitted, which is called the sketch plan, which involves the designation of the physical improvements, where the driveways would go, where the buildings would go, and your sketch plan fixes that location. As the application advances, there is a preliminary review stage and a final review stage. In the case of a minor subdivision, you can advance all the way to final. You don't have to do the preliminary stage. But in any event, the sketch plan stage remains the same. And in that review, you are fixing the location of the improvements. The applicant is left with that decision. So if they haven't done a sufficient job to evaluate those locations, when we get to the next level of review, doing preliminary and final review, and we determine something has to move, conceivably, he goes back to the beginning again and starts all over. So the sketch plan stage doesn't require all the analyses, the detail on the drawings. For example, the size of a pipe doesn't have to be specified at the sketch plan stage. However, you need to Jack would need to know that he can build this with a certain size pipe that can be somewhere. So an applicant will typically be far advanced in the material they submit sometimes, but it's not required necessarily for a sketch plan. A sketch plan is a more of a conceptual plan, and again, it just gives you the opportunity to fix the improvements in place, and the application then can move forward with the detailed review where it gets Rich's scrutiny and so forth. And importantly, from many applications we see, it gives the application an opportunity to go to the zoning board. You're fixing things in a particular location, that's what the variance would be based on. So that's the distinction.
Although after it goes to the zoning board, it still comes back to the planning board at some time.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And again, that's where we look at the more detailed components of a plan, the size of the pipes, the grading, the specific elements that would allow that building and that driveway to be placed where they have been proposed.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
And by the way, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, specified in the code. So the code is pretty clear about what's required. It's established for sketch plan, for preliminary, for final approval. So we're not making it up. It's documented in the code what is required at each stage of the process.
But this is just for subdivision. Site plan is one shot, you get all your comments up front.
Right.
So, Mr. Chairman, just again to be clear, an applicant often will do a lot of the work that's required all the way to final approval to know that the sketch plan is going to work. So sometimes we get very, very complete applications and plans that are submitted at the sketch plan stage. There's no foul in going beyond the requirements for sketch plan.
Right.
The issue is when you don't provide enough at sketch plan stage.
We really have not seen a lot of sketch plans per se, right? Okay, helpful, thank you. Yeah, Mike?
There are 2 variances required from the zoning board of appeals. You don't need my first comment where they're dividing a lot off. Lot width exits and re-enters the lot, and the lot depth line for lot, I'm sorry, lot 2 needs a 288 variance. I was reading it backwards. And lot 1, the lot depth line exits and re-enters the lot. All sketch details are now provided. The application should be referred to the ZBA for the necessary variances.
Rich, thanks, Mike. Rich, you also had comments, please.
I have one comment. Applicant has met the requirements of a sketch plat as defined in section 13111. However, the board should be aware it does not contain information regarding areas proposed to be reserved for open space. The applicant in his prior submittal admitted this would be discussed with the board prior to preliminary plan approval. That's part of sketch plan approval. So it needs to be identified at this time.
Okay. Anything else, Rich?
That is all. The rest of my comments are all for the next stage in preliminary plan, so that we had gone down the rabbit hole with before.
Thank you. Pat?
I think, Mr. Chairman, I raised my issues, and I think Jack even responded to them at the last time. So the principal issue, aside from the fact that they need 280A approval for this, was that the home was being sited in an area of steep slopes on the property, an area that we would typically want to avoid improvements on. So I think Jack came back to you at the last time and indicated they wanted to put the home there, so there's a walkout basement. It has a nice view of the pond that's on the property, so it was the applicant's choice to put it in that location. It wasn't a haphazard location, so they want to go with that. So it's your job to determine if that's an acceptable location.
Jack, do you want to expand, for some people who weren't here at the last meeting, do you want to expand at all on why that location? I know what Pat just says. Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean.
There's a lake on the property, right?
Yeah, they want to overlook the lake. They want to have a two-story walkout building. The driveway is minimal slope and minimal disturbance. The whole disturbance for this house and the driveway and the septic is a half an acre. I mean, this is a 12-acre parcel of land. It'll be the big lot where the existing houses is 8 and the lot they're cutting off is 4. So, I mean, we understand that we're making some disturbance and some steep slopes, but the total disturbance is minimal. And one of the things we've done since the last meeting was we had the wetlands flagged, and on this map here, that's the pond. The blue line is the wetlands boundary that Ted Kozlowski flagged. The pink line is the 100-foot
Jack,
set.
I'm sorry, where are you coming off of Union Valley Road?
Well, the existing driveway starts on Union Valley Road, and it goes all the way back to the existing house, way back here.
And then the other house that's not part of his property is on the right somewhere? So I'm just trying to locate the pond in my mind.
This is the pond. What house?
Where's that third house?
Oh, it's over here someplace.
All right.
It comes off of right here.
Okay.
And this is the proposed house location. This is the driveway, very short driveway. The disturbance, the disturbance limit is 100 feet from the 100-foot setback, so it's 200 feet from the pond. We're going to get that wetlands surveyed eventually, assuming we get a zoning variance, and that's what we're here for, to get your referral to the zoning board, please.
Wasn't there also a question about how many trees were going to be cut down?
Yeah, we requested a waiver from the tree plan, and I was out there today. I mean,
Something Anthony brought up the last meeting.
this area where the house is here is all brush, and the septic here is all brushed. There's maybe one big tree here, and maybe a couple little trees in this area here, but to go through the expense of surveying trees on where you got a half acre of disturbance on a 4-acre parcel.
But the issue, as I recall, part of it was, part of why they wanted to put the house there is to have the view of the lake. So did that include any trees coming down to make their view of the lake better?
No, because this house site is way up in the air, and the pond is way down. They'll be able to see from their walkout.
If I'm recalling the discussion last time, the issue was that there was vagueness as to how many trees were actually going to be cut. And understanding that it's a very forested property, there was just some preference by all of us on the board that the number of trees that were actually going to be cut be actually identified, which I think is different from doing a whole survey.
It's the same. It's really the same thing.
No,
If the board wants us to locate the trees in the area of disturbance, we will.
I think the concern, we've heard it from several different people, when you come back, if you get that far, because of what you need from the zoning board,
Right.
we would want more details on the trees.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, there's really two issues with respect to that. Number one, if you're satisfied with the location of the home as it's
Right.
presented now, he can provide those details when he comes back from the
Right.
zoning board of appeals. If, however, you are not satisfied with this and you want Jack to demonstrate, is there a better location outside of the steep slope? Jack would then have to say, well, if we moved it 20 feet over here, we'd have to take down more trees or fewer trees. So you would evaluate the comparison between the two. So if you're not satisfied, there's more work to be done. That's the sketch plan review. And there's more trees or less trees, there's fewer slope impacts, there's greater slope impacts. You're closer to the pond, you're farther away to the pond. So Jack can quantify all of that for you. But again, if you're satisfied with what he's proposed, all of that can follow.
But in addition, the variances have nothing to do with the siting of the house.
They would not, no, the 288 would not.
And neither would the
So I
depth
don't-
line.
Yeah, I agree with that. So there's no reason why you can't go to the zoning board of appeals. It's whether you want to still wrestle with this siting location or not.
I'm personally fine with getting it to the zoning board, and if they get their approvals, then we'll help Jack.
Yeah,
manage
and
it.
the only risk, Mr. Chairman, is that the zoning board conceivably can condition variances. So they may say, we'll give you the 280A or whatever, but the house needs to be here, or we want the drive, whatever. So there's always that risk when you haven't fixed a location, that the zoning board would do that for you, which may not be in your best interest. So that's, again, not necessary to this project, but something to bear in mind.
Do we have any concerns about the location?
There's a lot of property there.
Just looking at that, that's a common driveway, right? The new house is going to be served by that driveway, and
Yes.
the existing house is not on the 12 acres, correct?
The existing house is, you mean Fonte's house?
Yeah.
It's right there.
So
It's
that's
in the
part of-
12,
part
this
of the
is
same
12,
layout.
12 acres.
Okay.
This
That's
is
gonna be
8,
private
and
drive.
and this is 4.
Okay.
And this private drive exists all the way to that house.
Which is why he needs a 280A, because he's chopping off his frontage
Understand.
and giving it to the front lot.
You can't really move the house back, correct, because that's a steep slope? Right, so the fact that it's closer to the pond is actually a positive, right?
You're on high ground there, Jack, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, the steep slope is down here. The blue is really steep slope, the pink is 25 to 35. I mean, we can't go further down.
I would want the house to
And
be
you
as high
wouldn't
as
want to go
possible.
closer to the lake anyway.
In this day and age, with the storms that are coming,
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, the slope
I
issue, I
personally have
think
no problem
the
with it
bigger
being there.
issue was whether or not there were wetlands around that pond, which was a constraint
If
on
we
the
cleared
lower
the
portion of the
wetlands,
property.
then I have
Jack
no
answered
issue.
that question for you.
I was out there. That's true about the weather, right? You want to be higher rather than.
Building permit.
Especially
But it's still, it's still up.
my first house, he was on hillside view, I never had to worry about flooding.
People below you did. Questions, further questions?
I mean, I don't have a problem with the
It comes
site.
back to us too,
Yeah.
right? And I understand what Pat's comments.
With the detailed maps that are going to show everything,
Yeah.
each step.
Should get that.
Yeah. Okay, do we have a motion to grant sketch plan approval?
I'll make the motion to grant sketch plan approval.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We also need a motion to deny to the ZBA.
I'll make the motion to deny the applicant to the ZBA.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Jack, thank you.
We gotta stamp that, don't we?
Yeah, I gotta stamp that.
We gotta stamp it.
Good catch. Out the door.
I'm so happy he was getting ready to leave. Before it got worse.
Give him time for the football game.
Jack, thanks. Back. Last but not least, MCSS Self-Storage, 155 Houston Avenue, Carmel, waiver of site plan application. Mike, I believe you had some comments as well as Rich and Pat.
Yep. The applicant proposes to renovate the existing storage building in the CBP zoning district to a two-story self-storage use, which is allowed by right in the CBP zone. The applicant submitted a plan showing the necessary parking on the lot. I have no objection to the granting of a waiver of site plan approval for this property submission.
Rich?
No comments from the engineering department regarding the request, as long as there are no changes to the site being made.
And Pat?
And, Mr. Chairman, when our esteemed colleague presented this to you at the last meeting, there was a question about the parking. So the applicant took the time, modified the plan, the parking is shown, there are, I think, 72 parking spaces on the site, more than compliant. That issue has been resolved, no objection to the waiver.
That's music to my ears.
Any other comments from the board? It's at a good location, it's off the beaten path there, I think it'll be fine.
So, Mr. Chairman, you can resolve this as a motion to grant the waiver.
We have a motion to grant waiver of the site plan application.
I'll make the motion.
Go ahead.
I'll make the motion to grant the waiver for the site plan application.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Fewest words
Thank
you've
you,
ever said at
esteemed
the podium.
colleagues.
Fewest words you've ever said when you had a microphone in front of you.
That's on tape too, that comment.
Take care, we'll see you.
Take care. Rose distributed the minutes of July 28, 2021. Bob, I know you've made some comments. Do you want to make a motion to accept?
Sure, the minutes were fine, just a couple cleanups. I make a motion to approve the minutes.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye. Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night. Thank you.